All right, today we're jumping into a concept that's not just a side story, it's really the grand finale of a story that's been building for thousands of years. We're talking about the New Covenant, and it's presented as the fulfillment of everything that came before. So let me just ask you this to get us started. What if a story, a massive, sprawling story developed over centuries, had a single conclusion that changed how you saw everything that led up to it? Well, that's exactly the claim that the New Covenant makes. So let's dive in. To really get why the New Covenant is such a big deal, we first have to understand the pattern God set up before it. There was this whole series of foundational promises, or covenants, and each one was like a deliberate stepping stone. And this timeline here, it maps out that journey perfectly. You see, it all kicks off with Abraham, a promise of a people and a land. Then you get Moses and the law, which is basically the rule book for how that nation should live. And with David, that nation becomes a kingdom with a king. Each step was absolutely crucial, but you get the sense that something was still missing. It was all pointing to something more. So, centuries before the final act, a really interesting thing starts to happen. You start hearing whispers from the prophets. They begin talking about a future promise, a new covenant, that wasn't just going to be a simple update. No, this was going to be completely and fundamentally different. And here it is. This is the moment it becomes crystal clear. The prophet Jeremiah just comes right out and says it. A new covenant is on its way. And he makes it plain this will not be like the old one. See, the old one was external. It was literally written on tablets of stone. This new one, it was going to be internal. This chart just lays out that massive shift so well. You've got the Old Covenant, which was all about laws on stone tablets, and you needed priests to be the go-betweens. But the prophets, they were dreaming of something totally different. A reality where the law wasn't outside of you, but inside of you, written on your heart. Where knowing God was direct, not through a middleman. And where sin wasn't just, patched over for a while, but totally forgiven and just forgotten. So you've got this incredible prophecy just hanging in the air for centuries. Where does it all land? Well, the New Testament presents a very clear answer. It all culminates in the person and the sacrifice of Jesus. This is the moment the whole story hits its climax. And this statement, this is it, this is the linchpin. At the Last Supper, Jesus doesn't say this cup represents the covenant. He says this is the new covenant, sealed in his blood. And that is the crucial difference. This new promise isn't ratified by the blood of animals anymore, but by one definitive, personal sacrifice. Okay, so this new reality creates some huge contrasts with the old way of doing things. Let's run through them real quick. First up, let's talk about sacrifice. The old system required animal sacrifices over and over and over again. The new covenant, on the other hand, is based on the idea of one single, final sacrifice that is enough for all time. Second, the priesthood. Under that old system, getting to God was restricted. You had to go through a human priest as a mediator. But the new system claims to throw the doors wide open, offering direct access to God for anyone who believes. That barrier is just gone. And finally, the very nature of the covenants themselves. The book of Hebrews has this great analogy. It describes the old system as a shadow. It was like a picture, a symbol, pointing forward to something real that was coming. The new covenant, then, is presented as the substance. It's the reality that the shadow was hinting at all along. Okay, so what does all of this actually mean for a person? What's the practical difference? Well, the biggest claim is all about the internal impact. We're shifting from a system you try to follow to a new reality that actually changes you from the inside out. And we're back to Jeremiah's promise because this is the absolute anchor for the whole idea. Think about it. It's not just about God telling people what they should do. The claim is that he actually changes what they want to do. He doesn't just give you his law, he gives you a new heart that desires to follow it. So, we can kind of boil down the benefits into these 4 key pillars. First, sins aren't just covered, they're completely forgiven, remembered no more. Second, God creates that internal desire to obey him, writing his law on our hearts. Third, the Holy Spirit is given to all believers, not just to a select few kings or prophets. And fourth, as we said, that direct line to God's presence is now wide open. There's this incredibly powerful moment described in the Gospels. Right when Jesus died on the cross, the massive, thick curtain in the Jerusalem temple, the one that separated the holiest, most sacred space from everybody else, it was torn in two from the top to the bottom. I mean, you can't get a more potent symbol than that. The barrier was gone. The way in was now open. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together and ask the big question. Why does any of this matter? It really comes down to a fundamental shift in how people are supposed to relate to God. It's about moving away from an external system of rules and into an internal, transformed life. This slide just nails that transformation. First, it's a shift from religion to relationship. It's not about trying harder and harder to be good enough, but about living from a place of already being accepted. It's also a shift from striving to rest. You're not trying to earn something that's already been secured for you. And finally, it's a move from distance to intimacy, from standing back in fear to being welcomed in close, like a child. Ultimately, this is the thesis statement right here. The whole point of the new covenant, as it's presented, is to move faith from being an external checklist you have to follow to an internal life that flows out of you. And so that's the thought I want to leave you with. Really, no matter what your personal beliefs are, the concept itself is pretty profound. What does it actually mean for a faith, a moral code, to be written not on cold, hard stone, but on the living fabric of the human heart? It's something worth thinking about.